When we're young, we spend a lot of time planning our lives. We look for someone to plan it with. We look for friends to complete it, kids to enhance it, careers to enrich it. We work hard at making all that happen. But life has a way of upending our carefully made plans, and all of a sudden we can find ourselves having to redesign our lives all over again. There are examples of that everywhere you look. I have friends whose worlds were pretty much destroyed by addiction, but who then put the drugs down and learned for the first time how to live without destroying themselves and others. No matter how old they are when they stop, they learn the tools to turn everything around. I've also seen women leave abusive marriages and learn that being loved doesn't have to mean being hurt. I've seen kids overcome poverty and be the first in their families to go to college. I've seen people who've lost everything pick themselves up and start over. I've seen people make huge life mistakes, but then recognize it, take responsibility, make amends to those they've hurt, and move on stronger and better. In each of these cases, turning their lives around required the courage to face the fear of the unknown. It takes courage to push up against the way that it is or the way that it has been. It takes courage to push back and be creative with the gift of life. But that's exactly what building a life of our own requires. Thinking outside the box, being creative, being flexible, facing the fear of the unknown, stepping into it, and being willing to start over. Several years ago, I found myself having to recreate my own life. I had to step into the unknown and sit there. It was terrifying. I can't tell you I enjoyed it, but I can say I learned a lot, that I could reimagine, reconstruct, and rebuild my life. And every day I continued to do it. As Steve Jobs pointed out, life can either be limiting, safe, and secure, or it can be wide open, creative, and sometimes scary. Your life is yours to create and then recreate. As Mr. Jobs said, everything around you that you call life was made up by people who were no smarter than you, and you can change it. You can influence it. And once you realize that, he said, you'll never be the same again. Hi, you guys. Welcome back to another installment of Bouquet. What I just read is a piece out of I've Been Thinking by Maria Shriver. It is a book that my mom suggested to me, of all people. And I bought it and I just started it, and it's really interesting. And I wanted to take that piece and kind of run with it because it's been on my mind for like 3 days now. And I just wanted to give my perspective on this piece by Maria Shriver. And I also wanted to, I just wanted to give a piece of myself with, in this light. So that's the plan for today. So in the second paragraph that Ms. Shriver speaks about, she talks about, listening to people's stories in terms of drug addiction, in terms of abusive relationships, and so forth. And this idea of starting over, of being forced to have everything swept from under you and having to build your own life from scratch. That really spoke to me. And the first thing that I would like to kind of take that and personalize it is in 2012, when I was in my second year of college, I moved out from living with my mom, and I moved in with my dad and his second wife, Monica. And I was only there for 2 weeks until shit hit the fan, and they came to me and decided that it would be best if I leave. First they said I had a week, And then the next day they came to me and they were like, we want you gone tomorrow. And this was my dad telling me this, not her. It was her idea, but so that was kind of like, and when it happened, it was the first week of school, and I just remember carrying all this photo equipment with me in the rain, not a place to go. Like, it's early in the morning, nothing's open yet, and I just remember feeling really defeated, because I had tried so many different ways to communicate with them. I yelled at them, I spoke calmly to them, I wrote them a letter. Nothing was working. Nothing. And it was just a really hard time. And graciously enough, I remember trying to contact people, and I got a hold of my psychiatrist at the time, and she was like, come in immediately, we're gonna figure this out. And this was like a weekend. This was like not when she's supposed to be in the office. And she bought me breakfast, I remember that. She bought me breakfast. And I literally, the night before, I literally wrote down all the contacts in my phone, because it wasn't my phone, it was the stepwife or the second wife, her phone, and she was gonna take it back, so I wasn't gonna have a phone when they kicked me out. So I wrote down all my contacts in a notebook on paper, and I just remember sitting in the office calling every number that I had in that notebook. And it was so early in the morning, it was like 9:30 in the morning on like a Saturday or a Sunday or something. And I remember going through all the contacts that I could possibly think of them like being generous enough to let me stay with them for an undetermined amount of time. And no one picked up, and we're sitting there for a couple of minutes, and maybe a half an hour goes by, and one of my coworkers at the time from Trader Joe's, she calls me back, and I tell her the situation, and she was like, come over right now, like we're gonna take care of you. And she had roommates at the time, and I was sleeping on her couch for like 2 to 3 nights, I think. I think it was like 2 nights and 3 days. I don't remember, but those two people really got me through that time. And my mom. My mom took me back in, because the way that I left really hurt her. And she was gracious enough to let me back and stay with her. So